afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. This is a busy time of year in our gardens and home landscapes. Whether you're a new or experienced gardener, you've probably had some questions come up, or maybe you wonder about what strange plant growth is or a particular bug. Well, to answer some of the questions that arise this time of year, we've called on two experts from the University of Vermont Extension and the university's Plant and Soil Science Department. It's a pleasure to welcome back Leonard Perry and Ann Hazelrig. Thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah.
So Leonard, you're going to get us started. You brought in what looks like a mint plant?
This is a mint plant, Judy. It's actually a basil mint, which it smells vaguely of basil. There are all different types of mints. There's apple mint and lemon mint in addition to spearmint. So if you like summer drinks and have some of this handy by the porch, if you have part sun is okay. It may not grow as vigorous as this is actually just morning sun. It's doing pretty good. A couple things about mint. Of course, it spreads.
Right, it is mint.
And so even if you have it in a pot and you put that in the ground, and all the little holes in the bottom, roots will just come right out of that and it'll spread throughout the garden. So you want this up. This is up on a planter, in fact.
Away from
we like the wet cascades, so we just pinch that off and use it. But the other thing, mint is very vigorous, so you can see it just reaches the edge of the pot and grows around. So and it will kill itself off if you don't repot it. So each year you should probably divide it in half or chunks and repot some, and it'll fill up again. But that's the way to keep it going and keep it from taking over your garden.
Excellent. Well, now, Ann, you're in charge of the UVM Plant and Diagnostic Clinic, which is really sort of the front line when it comes to people reporting their problems, and they send you all kinds of things in the mail. So what are you currently seeing?
Well, right now, we've really had a wet June, and as we were just talking about, it's the third wettest in record, I guess. But that creates a lot of problems in the garden. I think a lot of our plants are looking pretty anemic, kind of yellowed, slow growth, not enough heat. So I think there's been a lot of nitrogen leaching, so people need to fertilize maybe to get them, green and healthy again. Also, we just need some heat. Also, people may have noticed some poor germination, so they just need to replant. But one thing I've been seeing with all this rainy weather is slug damage, especially in hostas, especially in shady areas. And slugs and snails have rasping mouth parts, and they cause these little holes in the hostas and really can cause a lot of damage.
But let's hold that up so you can see the,
and here are the two little
your friends that you brought in.
Yes, they keep trying to escape. But there are some good controls you could hand pick, but there are some good products. You can use copper stripping or diatomaceous earth, or an organic product called Sluggo that's iron phosphate.
Now, do you put that on the plants or on the ground?
You know what, I think on the ground.
Sprinkle it around?
Yeah, just follow the label directions.
Yeah,
but that's a good control. But once it dries out, they'll probably slow down.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
What else have you got for us to see?
Well, another thing that's, I just got this into the clinic yesterday, and this is a big problem, a new problem on all plants in the onion family that's called onion leek moth.
Okay. And
the person was wondering, why am I not getting any garlic scapes, which are the flowers of the garlic? And it's because this little pest has been, the adult lays eggs on the foliage, and then the larvae, which is a little caterpillar, feeds down inside the garlic tissue and causes this kind of damage. And I cut open, and here's the little, that's a pupae of the caterpillar, and we did have now of course we're not going to be able to find it.
Let me see if I can.
Yeah, the little caterpillar was in there, but it's really a new,
here they are.
Okay, a new invasive pest, and especially a problem in garlic and leeks. There are 3 generations of this pest per season, and it's a difficult one to control.
It just fell into my hand.
Yeah. It's hard to control because once it's feeding inside that tissue, you can't really use an insecticide to kill it. But you can do things by rotating. I would clip off and get rid of this infested stalk and kill the larvae that's in there. And Leonard was mentioning that in his garden, he uses floating row covers, and so that's a really good, effective barrier to keep those onion leek moth out of the garden.
Now, Leonard, you have some questions from viewers that we want to ask you about. Margaret from Stafford, Vermont wrote that she has rose, is it chafers?
Yep.
Okay, eating lots of her flowers in June. While she realizes the damage is done for this year, she's wondering what can she do to prevent future damage from these insects?
Yeah, and I've actually brought a picture of that so people can see what this little insect, but it basically feeds on the flowers, adult in June, and as you say, she was picking them off, but wondered, okay, how can I get on top of this next year? Well, she was asking about the systemic insecticides. That's actually the magnolia, which we'll take a look at next, but the rose chafer will eat the buds. The systemic, actually, the problem with that is it really isn't high enough concentration when you put it on. It gets all through the system of the plant, but it's not high enough to kill that. So basically, there's a rose chafer, just magnified, of course, on a flower bud, so you can see the size of it really, under an inch really. But neem insecticide's a plant-based pyrethrin, but you have to make sure you read the label on all these, because even though they're organic, you have to use precautions. Spinosad is one. Rotenone is one that you see often recommended, but that's really not in products anymore. It's been linked to Parkinson's disease. It's highly toxic to aquatic fish and so forth. So that's one that if you have old product, you might want to dispose of properly, and you probably won't find that. But anyway, rose chafer. The other thing you can think about is it turns into grubs that overwinter in the soil. So late in the summer, think about nematodes. There's some actually nematodes you can buy and put on the soil that actually go after these.
Oh, okay,
warfare.
Good. Okay, with the particularly harsh winter, homeowners may have decay or some dieback in their shrubs and trees. Leonard Rose from Ticonderoga, New York, wrote to ask if the old shrub magnolias are dead or will they regrow next year, and how should they be pruned?
Yeah, and she actually sent a picture of the magnolia. You can see there's a lot of growth at the base, but the top's pretty much dead. The nice thing is, on the top there are a few shoots. Those are secondary buds that have come out, so I'd recommend to her to cut back just above those. Hopefully those will grow out, so it's not all dead. A lot of people have asked me this about butterfly bush, about others. I've had forsythia die. It was a real tough winter, as people know. We don't have to remind them of that, but it really did a lot of damage to these. And so by now, it's a good time, if they haven't leafed out, you can scrape the bark with your thumbnail, and if there's any green underneath, it still might be living, but it's probably going to be brown by now and dead. So just clip it back.
Okay. Now, Ann, any comments that you want to add about dieback or secondary disease?
Well, yeah, a lot of secondary things can move in, but like Leonard said, once you prune things out, that's the best way to get rid of any of those secondary things. So really make sure you don't have any dead wood just hanging around in your shrubs. And I did want to mention something else when Leonard mentioned the rose chafers, and pretty soon we're going to be seeing Japanese beetles.
Right.
And you can spray insecticides, conventional or organic, but I would just mention that we want to protect our bee population. So if people are going to spray insecticides for these pests, do it at twilight when the bees aren't working.
Oh, good point.
Don't do it in the middle of the day when the bees could be active.
Do those traps work? You know, they have various traps for the beetles. I mean, it's very satisfying to see them caught in there.
It does work, and you should give them to your neighbors. That's what John Termel, the state entomologist, always used to say. They're great, but give them to your neighbors so they draw them, because they'll actually draw the beetles in.
Too, okay.
Yeah, so, and they may create more of a problem.
They're very powerful, and I had a neighbor one time, and he would bring over his trap and show me all the beetles. I said, that's great, and he got another trap. I never had any beetles, so he went to his house.
That's right.
That's a good tip. Maybe I'll give my neighbors
there
one
we go.
For the 4th of July. Okay, let's see. So we've hit on some key problems for this time of year. Let's talk a little bit about what's growing.
Okay. There are some things that, of course, you want to do. You pick this time of year, if you like berries at all, blueberries and raspberries. So I actually brought a tray of some raspberries, and basically the way you can just freeze these, which we like to do, and you just put them on a tray. And the reason to do that is if you just put them all in a bag, they'll lump together. After you've washed them, they'll lump together, and you have one brick of raspberries or blueberries. So this way you can freeze them separately, and when they're frozen, then just put them in a bag so you can can take them out
Which
as
is nice, so
you
you
need
don't
them.
have the pressure of having to make jam.
Exactly, you can do that when you have more time.
Okay. Now, I know you love growing garlic, and you've got some tips for folks?
We do, and as Ann mentioned escapes, and I brought some escapes along that if the leek moth didn't eat them, you should have. And again, we cover ours with that floating row cover, and if you do that, you shouldn't have any gaps. That moth that gets in there and lays eggs and makes a larvae will find those gaps. So totally cover your bed with, and it's starting early in the season, too late now, but you should see the escapes. If you have the escapes on there, on your garlic, cut those off. You can eat these, saute them and eat them, or put them in salads. That helps the cloves, the bulbs make up better. And here's an example. This is one we actually stored. It's still good, surprisingly, from last year. And soon it'll be time to harvest, end of July. And so what you want to look for is the tops dying back. And then when you dig up a bulb here, it should have several layers, 2 or 3 layers of these sheaths, as they're called, on it. And then you have the individual cloves here. As you can see, they're pretty tight still, but you break those apart. Those should be able to separate. They shouldn't be growing. And in fact, we have one that has already started to sprout. That's
now if you see this, I mean, I've seen them. Can you still eat them?
Yeah, you can, and you know, I find they're still, even if they get a little bit soft, I still find they cook up really well. But so if they still sprout and you have some of these, yeah, just cut the part out that sprouted, and you can still use that. So this is how they should look when you're ready to harvest. Dry them in warm, of course, very dry conditions, out of the rain and so forth, and for maybe a couple weeks, and then store them cool and dry through the winter. Don't let them freeze, and you may still have garlic until next year. Excellent.
Now, during the course of the gardening season, there are always new questions that come up. And where can people get some answers to some of their questions?
Master Gardener Helpline is a great resource. We've got a 1-800 number that anybody in the state can call for free. And they're gardeners helping gardeners, so they can answer their questions that way. They can also send samples into the Master Gardener Helpline.
Now you have some other things here too.
Well, this is another sample I just got yesterday. It's a pretty sad looking tomato.
Yeah, that is very sad.
Yeah. And you know what this is caused by is not winter injury, but cold damage.
So
it was a tomato that was probably produced earlier in the season. And when we have lower temperatures like 40s, 50s, as the young tomato is being formed, it causes this zippering and this kind of crazy growth. So, you know, probably this tomato is not going to look good, but the next one's produced
will be okay. So that's just weather related?
Yeah, it's weather related.
Okay.
So it's fine. I mean, you could even, once it ripens up, you can even eat it too.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. Another thing I brought, which we discussed that you saw in your yard also. I picked this from my spruce tree. And it's called a witch's broom. It's really
witch's broom.
Yeah, it's this proliferation of growth.
Yeah, so this is it's just on the branch, and it's got like a knob.
Yeah, and in fact, these they can be caused by insects, rust diseases, or mistletoe. And I'm not sure which caused this. I have to research it a little bit more. But you can also propagate this, right, Leonard? And you can. That's how they've developed certain clones or cultivars.
Exactly. Yeah. Some of the,
like a dwarfing.
Yeah, propagators, nursery people actually look for those, and because they're kind of weird in their stunted growth, and that's how you get a lot of the dwarf conifers.
Oh, really?
Originally, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's kind of neat. I don't know yet what caused it, but as soon as I find out, I'll let you know, so you know what.
Okay. And you have another branch here too.
Yeah. I just brought a branch from my apple trees. Because diseases are starting to show up on these now too. I was just going to mention this right here. I get a lot of questions about lichens.
Right.
And my tree is being killed by lichens. But actually these don't hurt the tree at all. It's a natural thing. It's an algal and a fungal component. But it indicates that the tree is growing slowly, or that it might be shade. So there may be other things that's causing weakening in the tree, but it's not this. But there's cedar apple rust is starting to show up. That's the bright orange leaf spots.
Yep.
Right. Apple scab fungal disease is starting to show up, and it's been a wet year, and that's always a good year for fungi.
And you brought a very sad-looking piece of tomato plant.
Yeah. Oh, that was another. This is one. that came from the same client that had the cold damage. And this looks to me, yeah, it's all curled and twisted. This, again, looks to me like the contaminated compost issue. And he did apply compost last November.
Okay.
And so I think that's what's causing this curling and twisting. I need to look into this a little bit more and see what the homeowner had done and where he had gotten the compost.
Now, Leonard, we have about a minute left. Do you have any other tips you want to pass along to folks?
I was just going to mention about container gardens. Those are very popular now, and they can have some problems. In fact, on my website, I've got a whole article that talks about different things if they're not looking good. Some of the main ones, if the plants are tall and spindly, maybe they're not getting enough light. As Ann mentioned before, if they're kind of yellowish, especially with all this rain leaching out the nutrients, then you might need more fertilizer. And also, if there's a lot of rain, you want to make sure they're well drained. Either the soil needs to be well drained. If not, you better repot that, or make sure there's plenty of, put a couple extra drain holes in the bottom.
Okay, we have a quick 10 seconds left. These are from the fields from our producer Will Michael's house, and he doesn't know what they are, but they're growing. And he would like
Pinks
to
and
know.
dianthus and yarrow and Shasta daisy. And you mentioned he just threw out the seeds in an area, and very lucky because he had cleared this area, and that's kind of what you have to do with wildflowers. You have to have a real good place, and he obviously does, and they come back each year for him.
Beautiful. Well, thanks a lot for coming in and bringing all your friends. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.